You're listening to Expat Radio. I'm Bill Anderson, and I'm coming live from the Costa del Sol. I have to say, a very hot Costa del Sol at the moment. Yesterday, the temperatures got up to 40 degrees in the shade, and trust me, it's not nice. The only bit of entertainment would be going down to the beach and watching all the prawns walking off after a day on the beach. I'm very delighted to have my guest today, Lynsey Drake. Welcome, Lynsey.
Well, hi, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I am looking forward so much to talking with you today because we're going to be talking. We'll talk a little bit about yourself first, but we're going to be talking about food. And you describe yourself as a passionate foodie.
Absolutely. Food, glorious food. That's me.
Yeah.
Sharing with people, entertaining, sitting around a dining table, sobremesa, as they say in Spanish, just fills my heart with joy. So, yes, I'm going to hopefully talk things all delicious with you today.
Yeah, and you've kind of turned your passion for food into a business as well, haven't you, Lynsey?
Yes, I mean, we started as a hobby, entertaining guests on our terrace up in the Montes de Malaga. We have a finca in the mountains. And then I thought, in my past life, I was a overseas tour guide and always worked in tourism. So I thought put two and two together and invite people up to our house and have a
Right.
little experience of life in the mountains and
Uh-huh.
food and traditions we have.
Yeah. So, tell us where you're from originally, Lynsey.
Okay, so originally I'm from Stratford-upon-Avon in Warwickshire, in the middle of England, Shakespeare's town.
That's a kind of posh
Uh,
bit, isn't it?
yes, it was beautiful, beautiful. But we were at a stage in our life where our children were young, and we thought, let's pick up sticks and move lock, stock, and barrel to Spain. So we gave it a go, and 18 years later, we're still here and love it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because a lot of people think that, and of course, not everybody does it. But I would say the vast majority of people, when they think about, oh, let's pack up and move to Spain, they're thinking about the Costa del Sol or one of the Costas, where they can go paddle in the sea every day. But you didn't, did you?
No, I didn't. We literally, everybody asked us this. How did you choose to live on a mountain? Well, we literally put a pinpoint in Malaga and a 60-minute radius and went traveling, exploring. We'd been on holiday many times to the Costa del Sol, but I wanted to have a more rural, rustic life and in a very traditional Spanish town. And I wanted my children to have a Spanish upbringing,
Yeah.
something different to experience.
So to give people a sort of visual idea, Lynsey, you're about just over an hour from where I live, but it's really heading inland, isn't it? It's not heading along the coast. It's very much
No, no.
inland.
So you head inland as if you were going up to Antequera or Sevilla and then hang a right. I call it second on the right, back of beyond.
Right. Okay.
And we're nestled between Comares and Colmenar
Right.
in the Axarquia.
Yeah. And well, you say you're in the mountains, so are you pretty much surrounded by mountains there?
Yes, that's all we can see. Mountains, olive groves and almond groves.
Right. Okay. And how's the weather been with you? Because when you move inland, the temperatures tend to be a bit more extreme, don't they, summer and winter? How's it been the
Yes, I'm
last
sat
couple of
here
days for you?
today. Yeah, I'm sat here today trying to get the smallest amount of breeze possible because I've just looked at the temperature and we're 38 degrees at the moment. So,
Yeah.
but as they say, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen.
That kind of works two ways for you, doesn't it? But
Absolutely. Always
but both.
busy when it's hot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people who move to Spain have never actually spent their first summer here or winter. And yeah, for me on the coast, I mean, the winters for me are very pleasant down here. I like the winters, but I've also spent some time inland. And it can be a bit of a shock. First of all, the heat in the summer, can't it? And then secondly, the cold in the winter.
Yes, absolutely. That definitely took us by surprise. I mean, obviously there was internet in those days, but we didn't Google absolutely everything like we do now. So the first year we were here, we actually had snow, and that wasn't in my agenda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But now we're used to it, and I actually enjoy it because we have true seasons, which is lovely, and I think that's important in life too.
Yeah. So, Lynsey, your finca is called La Rosilla,
Yeah, La Rosilla, Little
the
Roses.
Little Roses. Yeah. Tell us about it, and tell us about what you do, because I know cooking is part of what you do, but you also have other experiences on offer, don't you, for people that come to see you?
Yes, absolutely. We do events and catering all over sort of Malaga province for people in private villas and homes, etc. But our main business really is doing cultural and food experiences. So people visit us while they're on holiday and come up and spend a day with us in the mountains, cooking and eating and trying sherries and wine. Everything's included, and we do all
Right,
different styles to fit budgets and groups, etc., from
right.
arroz and paella all the way through to full gourmet tapas. So yes, a bit of everything.
Yeah. On the previous show that they were talking a little bit about super processed foods, and I think someone had done an experiment by taking some of these foods and leaving them out for some length of time, and after that length of time, they still looked the same.
Oh gosh, well, we don't have super processed foods here.
No.
Everything is handmade and seasonal and picked off the tree or from the local farmers market. So yeah, we're very fortunate to have an abundance of super seasonal produce all the time.
Yeah, and I think we're very fortunate living where we do that, and I'm talking about Spain in general because there is an abundance of fresh food, isn't there?
Yes, always. And I love the fact that you can only really get it when it's seasonal. We don't have strawberries in the height of summer, they're in springtime here. So
Right.
we adapt to what is in season at the time. At the moment, I've got figs falling off our trees, so we're having figs in everything.
So are we. So are we, Lindsay. We live in the countryside as well, just a couple of miles in, a couple of kilometers in from the coast, and I think we've got about, I don't know, 10 or 12 fig trees, and and we have figs for breakfast in the morning. But I tell you what, they do taste different, don't they?
Oh yeah, fresh off the tree. I always think it's like God's food that they're put there for a reason. I do
Yeah,
a lot of hiking in the mountains and a bit of scrumping as I go past trees and things.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I have them for my breakfast when I'm walking too.
Yeah, and do you have many trees at the finca? Do you have fruit trees, olive trees?
Yeah, most of our trees are olive trees. So we
Okay,
produce, pick and produce our own olive oil. Well, we go to the mill. So that's in sort of the winter season. And then we
right.
have almond trees also, just really enough for our own sort of eating. And then we have citrus trees, grapefruits, orange lemons.
Hmm.
I'm now growing a caviar lime tree, which is quite exciting. So it's
Okay.
like a lime, but long and thin. And when you open it up, it has hundreds of tiny little pearls inside it, which
Ah,
are beautiful for dressing plates and cocktails and things like that. So
yeah.
yes, not no, we don't have masses and masses, but enough to keep us busy.
Yeah, we're pretty much the same down here. That we have a lot of trees, and actually, it's a lot of work keeping them all in order. But we don't have them in the volume to turn it into something commercial. Um,
Yes.
but last year, when we were still suffering all the lockdowns and limitations and whatever, my wife, who is Spanish, she decided she was going to do a whole bundle of things like drying the figs and making fig roll and the
Oh,
pan de higo.
lovely.
And she was also getting kilos of tomatoes and doing sun-dried tomatoes, and we're still
Yes, I've
using
done
some
that
of them
this year.
actually.
Delicious.
Yeah, and this is what we're talking about, the kind of natural stuff that we have access to here, which is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think also we do a lot of, well, not bartering, but we share with friends. So if we particularly have a glut of something and they might have something else, like swap for eggs, for oil and things like that. And everybody's very accommodating and sharing, which is what I love. And neighbours will turn up, Yesterday I had the most giant, well, it was a courgette, but it looks like a giant marrow. It probably won a competition delivered on my doorstep. So I'm racking my brain for all different recipes for that to use as well. So yes, it's a a lovely way of life, and sort of going back to basics, really,
Yes.
paring back the ingredients to make simple dishes.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the, there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about the Mediterranean diet, and do you focus a lot of the things that you do really on the ingredients of the Mediterranean diet, or
Yes, yes, we do. I mean, abundance and copious amounts of olive oil, which is, a superfood and a good fat, no saturated fats. So obviously we use that in all our cooking, and lots of pulses and grains, which until really I came to Spain,
right?
they weren't really in favor or fashion, but now they are. And it's also a very good way to eat economically, but healthy too. So,
Yes.
and spinach and beans, pulses, lots of fish and eggs, lots of cheese, a
Yeah.
bit of everything, little bits of everything.
Yes, sure. And where did you sort of develop your skills for this kind of cooking, Lindsay?
Just constant trial and error and practice. And every time I travelled, I would go to a cooking class like I do here in somebody's home, and being taught by locals. And you don't have to be a professional chef if you've got the passion and you're willing to learn. And
Absolutely.
every day's a school day. I'm still learning every day, and
Yeah.
YouTubing how to do things. And if somebody posts a recipe, I'm always asking questions. And
Yes.
I think if you're honest with people, if that's how you've learned,
Hmm.
they love that. They love that, and it makes them feel comfortable too that they could do it.
Sure. We have a lovely lady called Janet Mendel. I don't know if you've come
I
across
know
Janet.
Janet. Yes,
She lives
yes.
in Mijas Pueblo, and I'm sure I'm right in the story that when she started doing her cookbooks, she would wander around Mijas Pueblo, which is it's really a very traditional place. There's a lot of local Spanish families living there, and she would wander around the narrow streets of this white mountain village, sniffing at what was coming out the windows. And when there was
Yes.
something that smelled particularly good, she'd knock on the door and say to the usually an elderly lady, "What is it you're cooking? Can I come in and see it? And what are you putting in it?" I have to say that the first time I did a paella, I based it on Janet's recipe for paella, and I thought I'd made a massive mistake. You see, Vicky and I hadn't been together very long, and her family are all Spanish. And I said, we'll have the family all over, and I'll make them a paella. So I'm thinking afterwards, I've got a Scotsman here who is going to make a paella for a Spanish family, and her mum and dad are very traditional Spanish.
Yes.
And I was thinking myself, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. But thanks to Janet and her cookbook, when my mother-in-law, and that's the important person there, when my mother-in-law took this taste of the paella and sort of rolled it around her mouth, and she said, "Este es un buen arroz." That's a good
Brilliant.
rice. So I am
I have a
eternally
funny
grateful
story when
to
I
Janet
first started.
Mendel.
I had a funny story when I first started making them. My husband was a very keen golfer, and we used to make one on the golf course on a Sunday. And I used to hide out the back and make it. And all the Spanish people would say, "Who's the cook? Who's made the paella?" I never told them. And then eventually I came out, and they couldn't believe, as they call it, Aguirre made it, and it was
Uh-huh.
actually good.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I think sometimes when you're not used to these things, I think you pay more attention to what goes into it, and if people have never tried paella, as they would call it, or paella, if they've never
Yeah,
tried it, you think, it's just rice and a couple of vegetables and some fish or whatever thrown into it.
yeah.
But actually, getting the base right is the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I also like to say there's actually not a right and wrong way to do
No,
things.
no.
I'm probably put things in mind that other people don't. Obviously, we do have the paella police in the world who will quite frankly say, no, that's not a traditional Valenciano.
Yeah.
But so we get around that by calling it arroz con cosas.
Con cosas, yeah.
Rice with things.
That sort of rice
And,
with things flung into it, yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. But it's, it's a way of cooking for me, and obviously in the traditional pan. And you can change it and suit ingredients, seasonal, etc. So there's no right or wrong. It's just a traditional method, which is what I love and explain to people when they're here.
But I think what you're saying is quite right, though, Lynsey, that, what we call the paella police, you can't put this in with that, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. But, I suppose I always imagined paella as the poor people's food, and they would basically, they wouldn't be going to the fish shop and buying the best of this and this and this to put into it,
No.
or going out to the butchers to buy the best pork or whatever. It would be, what's in the fridge or what's in the storeroom, what do we got, what do we need to use up? And I presume that in those days, before it was turned into an art form, anything would have gone into it that was kicking around the house, basically.
Absolutely, and like being up in the mountains, they definitely wouldn't have put fish in it. They
No,
didn't
of
have
course.
the ways to keep fresh and cold. So here they
Sure.
would use a lot of beans and the wild asparagus when it grows, or the cured meats, which lots of people say, oh, you can't ever put a chorizo in paella. If you want to do it, it actually
Yeah.
tastes good.
And I guess rabbit.
Rabbit, lots of rabbit, wild mushrooms when they're in season.
Yeah.
And they would come out to their country houses, not because they're wealthy, but they would have a part of land where they would have their chickens or their goats, and families would come on a Sunday. It would all be chopped rustically on a board, and they collect herbs off the mountain. Everything's added in, and it's just, a way of life. And yes, a very simple dish, but a way that they could share with a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, would you say that your paella is one of your signature dishes, Lynsey?
Well, I cook a lot of them. By the end of the season, I'm like, no more arroz, please. No, I'm joking.
I know. Well, listen, I've been here 20 years, and yeah, I mean, we do have paella or similar. Usually, if we have people round, and especially if it's Spanish family, we would do a paella. But I'm a local councillor here in Mijas, and we do have to attend lots of community events and things that are happening,
Yes.
And I have got to the point, I have to be really brutally honest and say, oh no, not another paella.
Yeah. I know. It's so funny because when my children would get dropped off on the top of our track after school, because they finish like 2:30.
Sure.
And the bus driver would open the bus door, and then he could smell the aromas going up the mountain, and he'll say, your mum's cooking arroz today, I can smell it.
Yeah. So that's the paella, and there are lots of the seasonings that go. We call it the sofrito, and for people that don't understand what the sofrito is, can you explain that? This is where all the goodness is, isn't it? In the
absolutely.
the paella.
So in mine, I have onion and red and green peppers in mine,
Yeah.
and then lots of people don't even put onions in, but then we saute that down in lots of olive oil. And then I would add my garlic in at a later stage because it's very hot and then it doesn't burn.
It doesn't burn
make
it, yeah.
bitter. And then we later on, after we've added the rice, we add the grated fresh tomatoes. And as I say, chop and change. The last few weeks, we've got a lot of vegetarian, vegan clients coming, so we have to adapt for them as well. But we did an arroz last week, had 13 different vegetables in. It was just fantastic.
But that's a good thing about something like this, that you can adapt it to whatever you want, can't you? If people are not so into fishy things, then you can put vegetables and some meat or chicken or some pork or whatever, or as you say, some chorizo, this sort of spicy sausage. You can do anything you like, can't you?
Yes, it's just the method, and it always is the wow factor at the end when you carry that huge pan in. For a lot of people, my largest pan cooks for 100.
Wow.
But in our local town of Camaris, when they have their patron saint festival, their pan cooks for like 3,000 people.
Oh my
It's
God.
ginormous, and
Yeah,
there's like 40, 50 men out around the side with big giant wooden panels. So it's a spectacular thing to see,
sure.
which and we should all be very proud of it.
Yeah, I had an event here for people, and I think there were about 60 people coming to it. So I spoke to a friend of mine who had one of these sort of 1.5 meter paella pans,
Yes.
and or he made the paella for say about 60 people. And I can't remember how many kilos of rice went into it, but there was a hell of a lot.
I know you can't lift the pan afterwards. I've made that mistake once or twice by cooking it in not the perfect position and then trying to move it.
Right, okay. Right, Lindsay, we're going to come back in a minute. We're going to take a short break and we're going to talk a little bit more about La Rosilla and what you're
Okay.
doing, the people that come, and then talk a bit more about food. Let's just take a
Okay.
short break.
Okay, thanks.
You're listening to Expat Radio, your worldwide friend.
Welcome back to, you're coming live from the Costa del Sol and the mountains of the Axarquia here in the south of Spain. My guest today is Lynsey Drake from Finca La Rosilla, lifestyle and food. And we're talking about your business there in La Rosilla and also about food, Lynsey. Everybody loves listening to things about food, don't they?
Hope so.
Yeah. So tell me, Lynsey, do you have accommodation at the finca as well, or do people just come for the day and spend the day with you? How does that work?
Most people up until now have just come up for the day or stay
Right.
locally, and then we do it over a couple of days. But as from this year, we now have one guest suite
All
for
right.
two people, so they then can come on a private culinary adventure, which is uh, something now we can offer, which is great to look forward to. And then from September, when it's slightly cooler, we're also going to be offering hiking and food holidays. So to
Great.
hike and work up an appetite all day and then come have some gourmet food in the evening. So that'll be exciting too.
And of course, it has to be washed down with something, doesn't it?
Yes, always wash down. We like to start the proceedings with a sherry. We're sherry aficionados, and we're loving the renaissance that sherry has over the world. And we try and encourage people to try it and change their opinions of it, of a drink that they might have
Sure.
just had with their granny years ago.
Uh-huh.
Because there's a sherry wine to match every dish of food,
Yeah.
from savoury to sweet. So we do that. And obviously a lot of the local wines in our area, the moscatels and the famous Spanish sweet wines, and the
Yes,
mosto
sure.
from our town of Colmenau. So
Ah,
yes,
right.
delicious.
And for people who may not be aware, I mean, we're used to the term sherry, but it actually comes from the name of the town, Jerez. Jerez is where the sherry is made, and it's not actually very far away from us here, is it? It's a couple of hours from here.
Absolutely. The Sherry Triangle, Jerez, San Luca, and Puerto de Santa Maria.
Yeah,
And yes, all made in the traditional way, and, celebrated enormously throughout the region. In fact, there is an international Sherry Week each week that has been running over the last few years,
right.
which we take part in also, again, to encourage and, display the delicate flavours and the complexities of the sherry wines.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some. I mean, there are some rough local wines around, but there's some very good ones as well, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's worth a try, and everybody has different tastes and
Yeah,
things.
sure.
But yes, the Malaga wine and the Ronda wine region now is coming up in leaps and bounds.
It
They have
is,
some
yes.
really special wines to try. Slightly more expensive, but that's because they're much smaller vineyards and bodegas. So you are getting something very traditional and well made. So it is worth a try. And a lot of them have a mark on them called Sabor a Malaga, Taste of Malaga.
Yes.
So these has been chosen specially along with lots of other local produce to represent Malaga and our wonderful province.
Yes, and as you say, that there are some very nice local wines. We have a small bodega, small winery in Mijas Pueblo. It's what you would call like a garage winery,
Yes.
really. And as you say, they're not making vast amounts of wine. You know, maybe they'll make 1,500 bottles on a good year, maybe 2,000 bottles, a nice red, nice white, or a couple of reds and white, and that's it. When it's gone, it's gone. But some of these wines are just outstanding, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And up here in the mountains, a lot of our wine is sweet, which we would either have as a ice cold with an aperitif or with a dessert, vino de Camares, and that's when they collect the grapes and then they lie them out in the sun to dry, the pasas, the sultanas.
The sultanas,
and then
yes.
the natural sweetness then comes from the dried grape, which is absolutely delicious. You have to be careful though, because it slips down very well.
Too easily, yes. Yeah, but with some of these, you can actually smell the sultana aroma, can't you, in them? You know, they've got this sort of almost nuttiness under the sweetness, and you can really smell that, you know, these haven't just come from grapes, these have come from sultanas. Yeah. A lovely tip with the local pasas is if you actually pour the wine over them and let them steep in the fridge and then spoon them over very good vanilla ice cream. That is a treat. Right, yeah. To go back to food for a moment, Lynsey, there are differences, if you like, between summer food and winter food here in Spain, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. In the winter months, we have lots of more heartier stews and hot pots, one-pot dishes, which are absolutely delicious. Again, using lots of pulses, and probably, you know, families would have made a big pot on a Monday and that would feed them throughout the week.
Yes.
And then obviously in the summer months, as now we have all our chilled soups.
Yes.
All our different gazpachos and ajo blanco, and which is the chilled garlic and almond soup, which are perfect for this temperature.
Sure.
I mean, every day, really, about sort of 12 o'clock, I will have a large glass of gazpacho, so you're getting all your vitamins and refreshing and rehydration. It's perfect.
Yeah, and my wife also makes, she probably makes once or twice a week a big jug of salmorejo, which is
delicious.
It's kind of like the kind of gazpacho, like this cold tomatoey soup, but it's thicker, and they use bread in it normally to thicken it up, and then you get chopped eggs and some chopped ham and things on the top. And if she's feeling hungry, she'll usually pour herself a bowl of salmorejo and put some bits on the top, and she'll say, right, that's me for a while, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to get all your vitamins in and cool you down at the same time. And I love the way that each of the towns, you know, Córdoba and Sevilla, they all have different methods and way of making these things. And nothing's right or wrong. Just have a go and, you know, try it out. I mean, lots of people, when they first come to La Rosilla, and we talk about chilled soups, you know, they pull a face and think, oh, couldn't have cold soup. So I try and say to them, think of it as like a vegetable smoothie or a fruit smoothie. You would eat that. So have a go. We make a lovely one here with beetroots and fresh orange juice that we squeeze, and a little cumin and yogurt that has some Moorish herbs and flavors, and it's just delicious.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, when people who are not accustomed to this hear soup, and then they hear cold along with it, the natural reaction is, you know, soup's supposed to be hot. but
I mean, I have a very embarrassing story many years ago when I was on holiday with my parents in Spain, and my dad ordered gazpacho not knowing that it was a chilled soup, and then told the waiter that his soup was cold and could he have it heated up. I mean, we now know a bit more about this, and
hilarious. Yeah.
I have always fun reminding him of that story.
Yeah, but as you say, Lynsey, there are these varieties of these cold. I'm going to call them cold drinks because very often gazpacho, which is, I suppose, the nearest thing that you would be able to say is tomato soup. You know, it's made with tomatoes and some vegetables and whatever. But there are a variety of these, as you've mentioned. You know, there's the gazpacho and the ajo blanco, which translates to white garlic.
That's right, yes.
And it's very different, isn't it? And these are served in glasses usually, just to drink, rather than a bowl with a spoon.
Yeah, I find the ajo blanco is the most dividing one. That's a bit like Marmite. People love it or hate it.
Oh, right, okay.
I love it. But and especially now, if you've got figs on your trees, to top an ajo blanco with some figs and a sherry vinegar reduction is absolutely delicious.
Yeah, yeah. And the people that come to La Rosilla, are they generally people that live here and just want to get away for the day, or people who are on holiday and want to spend a day doing something different?
Mostly, 90% of people, I would say, are intrepid tourists from all over the world. I mean, we're always very grateful. We have a map that we tick off where people have come from, not where we've travelled to. So most countries are getting ticked off, which is wonderful. And then obviously we did some new courses, added some new courses like bread making day, etc., for people who live locally and want to perhaps learn a new talent and share that. So we have had to, like, oh gosh, everybody I know sort of had to think on our feet over the last couple of last months to get through this pandemic and come out the other side holding on and ready to smile again and welcome everybody. So yes, we do bread making, things like that, or we take it tailor make. So some people will say, can you teach me how to do a dinner party? Can you show me how to do tapas for an event? So yes.
Yeah, and I was looking at, I'm not sure if it was on your website or your blog. I think it might have been the blog. You have some lovely pictures there, really succulent food. And you also have recipes underneath for how to do them, don't you?
Yes, I do. I need to catch up in my blog. I don't know where my time's gone. But yes, and in my head I have my recipe book. And one day I will publish that or write it down for everybody to have a go at. But yes, I like to share recipes, and I also like people to share their recipes with me so I can try things, which is great. So I get a lot of inspiration, like many people, off Instagram and other local food bloggers, which is great. And the food industry, at the moment in Malaga is great, and everybody's always so supportive of one another. Sure. It's not competition. We all help out each other, and which is super. Yeah.
Well, I have to say that the one that really caught my eye were your croquetas, the croquettes, which are they're very typical down here. And my mother-in-law died about 6 or 7 years ago, but that was one of her things because, you know, she had a large family, and you know, she would buy an old hen and she would boil it, and then, you know, she would make these croquettes with it. And, you know, Lynsey, I have to say, there have been times where we've been out and maybe we want something to nibble on while our food's coming, and we order croquettes and we get these horrible things that have clearly been bought in the local supermarket and frozen. Yeah. And any contents in it feels as if it's been fired in from Stirling Castle and mist.
I always say I think you can tell the quality of a restaurant's food by their croquetas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have specific restaurants nearby where I'm like, yeah, I'm having your croquetas. They're wonderful. We like a spinach one, or as you say, with chicken. But they are fiddly to make. They are, you know,
they're
it takes
messy.
time, and you've got to be relaxed and
Yeah.
calm, and
They are a
just
bit
have a
messy. My wife does make them from time to time. There's only two of us here, so if she makes 20 croquettes, we can't eat them all, so you end up freezing them, and it gets
yeah.
complicated. But yeah, and we visited a friend who had made us croquettes, and these were the most massive croquettes. It's a Spanish friend of ours, the most massive croquettes I've ever seen in my life. And I said, Roberto, the croquettes are big, and he said, yes, I have big hands.
Super. My kids would love them.
So that's a very typical Spanish thing, and again, it's really poor people's food, isn't it? You put in what you've got.
Absolutely. You've got what left over from your chicken or the jamon when it's nearing the bone, and you can just
Absolutely.
chop all the little bits and pieces up. It's making do of what's got in your cupboard,
Yeah.
economically, but again, all about sharing food with other people.
Yeah, but they are yummy.
Delicious. Have to
Okay,
watch the waistline though.
I know. We all need to. The good thing is about having hot summers is you maybe just don't feel quite as up for these things during the summer.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, and we're all going to eat later. I mean, for me, the aroma of summer has to be the espetos, the sardines on the beach.
Yes.
That to me, when I smell that, I think, yes, I'm home. I'm Spain. This is what it's all about.
Well, actually, my wife and I were walking along by the beach just a couple of days ago, and this was her comment exactly. She said, for me, summer is sardines done on an open fire and open barbecue with the cane sticks holding them together. She said that is summer for
Beautiful.
me. Yeah.
And I don't know whether you probably do, but your listeners might not know. You should only eat sardines, really, if you're being true, in June, July, and August. And they're the months without an R in them, so that means they're at their best.
Right. I didn't know that, but actually, when I think about it, living where we do, that tends to be when they're available.
Absolutely.
We have these. They call them here chiringuitos, which are really sort of beach bars, beach restaurants, and everyone has a boat at the side of it filled with sand, and they cook them on the barbecue in this old boat. But they're only open for generally a sort of short period of time. Yeah.
And it's so good. I mean, if you think, you could get 4 or 5 fresh fish on this lovely wooden stick for, depending on whereabouts you live on different parts of the Costa, but it can be from €3, and it's just great. And you eat them with your fingers and on a bit of bread
Absolutely,
and mop it up,
yes.
and some people eat the whole lot, even the spines and the head.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
a personal choice.
Yeah, well, I draw the line at the head, but I know a lot of Spanish people that love sort of sucking the head out,
Suck the heads of the prawns.
The prawns,
Yes.
yeah. So you do a lot of catering, Lynsey, and people come and talk to you about how to prepare dinner parties and tapas parties and this sort of thing. What other typical Spanish meals would you say were your kind of key things that people want to learn about?
Well, we sort of focus on rustic dishes that are traditional to our area. Being up in the mountains and near Comares, which was the Moorish, well, it is a Moorish hilltop town.
Yeah.
We take a lot of our spices or flavors from these continents. So we use quite a lot of cumin and mint and fresh herbs and spices in our food. We do use a lot of chickpeas and
Right.
hearty stews and almonds to thicken sauces, and meatballs in a salsa almendras, an almond sauce, so it's very traditional to us.
Yes.
Also, our local town of Colmenar specializes in embutidos, which is charcuterie, the cured meats and the chorizos and things.
Yeah.
And morcilla, so we do a lovely morcilla and apple dish with the local cane honey. So we try and showcase what we can get locally, the famous goat cheeses. So there is something for everybody. And again, to share with friends. So it's delicious.
Yeah. I will have to ask this question to you on behalf of my wife.
Oh gosh.
Do they do they do a decent morcilla picante up there?
Yes, they do.
They
They
do.
have, yeah, it's fabulous. And in fact, in Colmonel, they have a festival every year, the Chorizo and Mosto Festival, where so they
Right.
showcase all their meats.
Ah,
You can
right.
actually get one sausage that has got three sections in it. So you can have
Right.
chorizo, morcilla, salchicha, all in one sausage.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
And
amazing.
again, for people listening elsewhere, I need to explain what morcilla is really the Spanish type of black pudding.
Yeah, a
Um,
blood
uh,
sausage.
and blood sausage, yeah, and picante just means that it's spicy. It's got a little bit of a bite to it, and
And that's another ingredient that a lot of people will prejudge and not want to try. But it's actually, it's very mellow and nicely spiced. And when you pan fry and caramelize it, it's absolutely delicious.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. You gather that we're not vegans, but yeah. Well, I think a trip to Colmares is on the cards because every time we go inland, my wife usually tries to find a little what do they call the charcuterie, the sort of delicatessen type shops,
Yes, yeah.
or a local butcher to see if they have this morcilla picante. And
Absolutely. I mean, people come up, our butchers are actually open on Sundays as well, and people travel all over. There's queues outside the butchers on Sundays, and they come out with armfuls of cured meats and big
right,
hamams and cheese and things like that,
yeah,
which I think is wonderful. Well, what I also love about here, that most towns have a food festival of some type, So in our other town, near town of Rio Gordo, they have a festival of snails, the Caracolis festival. We have a cherry
yeah.
festival. We have a meloncoton peach festival. Everything's celebrated, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's what you were saying earlier, which I think is really important because I think there's more behind it than we sometimes think, but it is about using stuff in season. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, we eat a lot of figs over the summer, but we wouldn't really think, yeah, of course we can get them in the winter if we wanted to, because that the markets will have them. But we wouldn't really generally think about buying figs when they're not in season.
No, absolutely not. And I always think it's quite exciting waiting for the next produce. For instance, I absolutely love pomegranates to the point where I'm watching them growing on the trees, ready to pick them. And they
Yeah,
should be out very soon. I do feel, though, over the last few years that our seasons have changed. For
sure.
instance, when we first arrived in Spain, people didn't pick their almonds until end of September, early autumn. But
Right,
now the almonds are already ready to be picked off the trees now. The same with our olives. We always harvested after Christmas, and now this year it will be before Christmas. So
right.
we just take sort of advice or watch what our local
Yeah,
farmers are doing and go, right, let's go. It's time to pick.
yeah. We have a few pomegranate trees as well, but the last couple of years, I don't know if it's been to do with the heat or whatever, but an awful lot of them are splitting before they're
Yeah, they
ready to
split too
pick.
soon.
Yeah.
I think
So,
that's lack of water.
well, it could be. I mean, we do water regularly, but we have to be careful at the same time, because water down here on the coast is at a premium, and
Yeah, we totally understand that.
so yeah, we do water probably every second day. We give water to a lot of the trees and other plants that we have, but we do have to be careful with it as well. I guess in
I
the
mean, a lot of
mountains,
the farmers up here are changing crops over the last few years. Unfortunately, there was a pest that killed off all the prickly pears, the chumbas.
yeah, we
So
had that.
they've gone from the mountains, but a local farmer has reinstated a whole hillside of them. So that's good. So we're hoping those will come back. But
Right,
a lot of the local farmers around here are removing almond and olive trees and planting mango and avocados because obviously they got a lot more money for them. But there's two
sure.
ways of thinking about that because obviously our water is so precious and these types of fruit, tropical fruit, need so much more water. So it will be interesting to see over the next few years how it does affect us all.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that there might be grants available to them for growing particular types of fruit or whatever. And
Yes, absolutely. But it's definitely changing the landscape around here.
uh
But we'll see what happens. Hopefully, when all the trees have matured, it will bring some, lush
yeah.
vegetation back to the mountainsides.
And are you busy at the moment, Lynsey? I know that, well, I didn't have to twist your arm very hard, but I know this must be a pretty hard, busy time for you.
Well, fortunately, it's nice to say, yes, I am busy
Good,
after 18
good.
months of not being busy. Yes, once sort of American tourists were allowed back in June, things started opening up and people have started visiting again. The difference I'm finding this year is everybody, which I understand is a bit last minute. So
Right.
you don't sort of know from one week to the next what the plan is. And look, I do wedding catering as well for smaller weddings,
Okay.
like up to 100 people, and all of those were cancelled or postponed. So we're fingers crossed for the autumn they can go ahead with people.
Right.
And tomorrow here at La Rosilla, we're in full party mode because it's my daughter's 18th birthday. So
Oh,
I'm busy cooking for family today, which makes a nice change.
well, what's your daughter's name?
Her name's Nellie, and she's 18 tomorrow. So
Well, happy
my
birthday,
last
Nelly, for
baby.
tomorrow. So I think you can at least guarantee the food's going to be good, yeah?
I hope so. Didn't
Um,
make the cake though. Somebody else has made the cake for me.
uh, and for people who are listening and might want to take a look, your website is lovely and your blog is really nice. It's very
Thank
colourful. There's
you.
lots of lovely pictures. Your website is larosilla.com, isn't it?
That's right.
And
And I am at La Rosilla on all social media as well. So Instagram and
right.
Facebook,
And
etc., etc.
Rosilla is spelled Rosilla.
That's right.
For people that don't know the Spanish Elie. So Rosilla, larosilla.com. And it really is worth looking at. And this on the blog, which you can get to from there as well. You can see all sorts of beautiful recipes. And I think you're really going to enjoy it, folks, if you take 10 minutes to take a look at it. And if people are coming to this part of the world, do they
Come up and see
contact
us.
you? Do they contact you through your web page?
Yes, absolute. Webpage, Instagram, Facebook. I'm there. And yes, we just, love to welcome people. My catchphrase is Mi casa es tu casa, my home is your home. And we just like to, as I say, welcome and share a little of our lifestyle, how we've survived over the 18 years and how,
Yeah,
times change. But food is always unites people from all around the world.
absolutely. And my wife has already said to me this morning, she was taking a look at your website, and she said, we need to go up there. So,
Oh, come,
Lynsey,
come.
we need to organise a trip up there one day.
Wait
Uh,
till it's a bit cooler.
I think that's some very good advice, yes. And unfortunately, we're coming back that night. I won't be able to sample too many of the wines, but never mind.
We'll sort something out.
Lynsey, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fun. And we wish you all the very best with the business. And let's hope things are turning around in terms of mobility and people coming to visit you.
Yes,
And
thank you very much.
I hope that if I ask you again, you're going to be so busy that you say, I'm really sorry, Bill, I can't make it.
Oh, I've always got 5 minutes to talk about food.
Lynsey,
Thank you, Bill.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you.
Have a
Happy
great
birthday to
weekend.
Nelly tomorrow, and have a great weekend, and really enjoy your time with the family. And we're going to go
Thank you.
out with a nice song from Bob Marley.